How you doing, guys? It's Alessandro here from Spicymoustache with some new tips in order to help you create your own green area, indoor or outdoor, following the principle of do as nature does. At this point in the season, you probably managed to germinate your seeds and they're starting to develop nicely. However, now they're getting big and they would need a new home. I personally think that May, it's a sort of transition between spring to summer. It's an ideal time frame to transplant plant into their final home. However, transplanting is an important event in a plant's life. It's like for us moving to a new house. If done wrong, your whole food production might suffer. So dig up the like button, and today I'll show you all you need to know to transplant vegetables in your garden. Transplanting, it's an easy skill that all gardeners need, and it's pretty simple. In general, you would want to disturb the roots as little as possible to avoid any sort of injury, also known as transplant shock. In this way, your plant will quickly thrive in their new spot. The best time to transplant would be early spring and fall, when plants are still dormant. There are some kind of plants that need transplanting in order to rebloom. Some plants, like the bearded iris, needs to be divided and transplanted to thrive. When transplanting a plant, you get the chance to look at the roots, remove any waterlogged or diseased soil, and also trim back any rotted root. But most of all, you will get the roots into some new soil fresh mix, which is full of nutrients. This type of soil gives plants a more complete nutrition that will add to the health and well-being of the plant. Transplanting can be a tricky procedure, but you need to take steps to minimize the transplant shock. However, if done correctly, transplanting is a convenient and cheap way to expand your garden. Another reason is that most plants started in pots will fill up the space available and start taking the shape of the pots with their roots. This means that with a limited space for the roots, they will grow to a limited size and production. The first thing that you need to prepare when transplanting a plant, it's a good soil mix. It needs to be a rich soil mix with compost, so you can provide your plant with all the nutrients necessary to the growth of the plant. But also, it needs to be well draining and aerated. To make a good soil mix, combine 50% potting soil, 40% compost, and 10% worm casting. Also, I add a few handfuls of perlite or vermiculite. Adjust this ratio based on the plant that you need to transplant in your garden, because there are a few plants that they don't really tolerate too much organic matter. You could also add mycorrhizae to the mix. Mycorrhizae are the symbiotic relationship that forms between fungi and plants. The fungi colonize the root system of the host plant, providing increased water and nutrient absorption capabilities. In exchange, the plant provides the fungi with carbohydrates that forms during the photosynthesis process. I use this mix, adjusting the ratio based on the plant that I'm going to transplant in my garden, for almost every vegetable plant in my garden. However, you could also find good soil premix at your local garden center. Plants could be transplanted either in ground, pots or raised beds. Just make sure to prepare in advance the plant's new home. For example, if planted in ground, just spread an even layer of compost all over the place where you're planning to plant your plant. To understand if a plant is ready to be transplanted, it's really easy. You can pop plants out of their container to check when the roots are ready to be transplanted into a new one. When transplanting into a new container, make sure to use something twice as large as the old one. Transplant either early morning or late in the day to avoid any sort of stress or shock for the plant. However, if your plant were moved from an indoor area to outdoor, they need to acclimate gradually, or otherwise they will suffer from the stress for the different temperature and humidity. To do this, just take them in and out each day, increasing the amount of time that you leave them outside. Start with just a few hours a day, and after 7 days or so, they will be ready to be left outdoor completely. It's recommended to transplant plant either early spring or fall, when plants are still dormant. However, we had frost waves longer than usual, and I usually wait between 2 to 3 weeks after the last wave of frost before transplanting into their final home. Before starting to transplant your plants, gather all your materials so you won't have to run around during the process. You will need pots, your soil mix, your tags, a water-resistant marker, and a trowel. Just make sure that your marker is waterproof, or you will lose track of the plants in your garden. Water all your plants before transplanting, so you lower the risk of damaging the roots. Do not force your plants to come out of the pot by pulling it from the stem, or you might risk to cause some damages. Just simply squeeze around your container until the root mass of the plant gently slides off. Alternatively, if you planted in modular cells, you could use a butter knife to extract your plants. If you have more than one seedling per pot, gently pull them apart. I find this really easy by using a bowl filled up with water, submerging the root mass and gently pulling them apart. A quick trick to transplant your plant is to fill up the bottom of the new container, put the old container inside the new one, making sure that both upper border are at the same height. Fill up with soil mix around the inner container, and once your new container is filled up with soil, you can slide off the old one, leaving the hole perfect to plant your new plant. As soon as you plant your seedlings into the new home, make sure to water so it's gonna be firmed in position by the soil compacting around the roots. In general, plants should not be planted any deeper than the roots were already. However, there are a few exceptions, like tomatoes, that transforms all the ears along the stem into new roots, so it's best to plant them as deep as possible. When the plant is at this stage, with all the roots coming out of the bottom, it's probably root bounded to the pot. What it means is, I'm gonna show you. As I said, it's root bounded, which means that it has the same exact shape as the pot. So in order to help the plant to start growing again, you need to break this mass at the bottom. Don't be scared. Just break it up until most roots are spread evenly. And now it's ready to be transplanted, and it's gonna recover quickly and start putting on new growth. Another tip would be to leave a gap in between the soil level and the top of your container in case you would like to mulch. This will help to protect the soil and also to protect the plant from any sort of disease that could potentially come from the soil. If something goes wrong during transplanting, your plant might suffer from transplant shock. Transplant shock is a stress that a transplanted plant suffers from, and consequently it doesn't thrive. This might refer to the roots not taking hold to the new environment, a shortage in water, or an attack by different pests. When this kind of stress affects one of your plants, it might go dormant or become stunted or eventually even die. While there is typically no cure for transplant shock, there are a few treatments that could potentially help, but in the best case scenario, you should always try to avoid it. If a plant starts to look wilted after transplanting, there might be a water retention issue. Sometimes this means the roots were not broken up enough, so they can't absorb enough water. You can easily sort it out by digging up the plant, breaking up the roots, and soaking in water. While it will be tempting to dig out all the plants that you want to transplant, you need to do it one by one, because the roots left to open air, they might dry out and damage the plant. Instead, dig up one of the plants and transplant immediately, so then you can move to the next one. I hope you liked today's video, and if so, please subscribe to my channel, turn on the notification settings so you can be notified every time I post a new video. And I'll see you next Friday for another episode. Thank you so much for watching. See ya!